I am going to share some notes with you that came from Gary Keller's mastermind a few weeks ago. And we're going to start with a conversation on the market. Now, just hang in with me as I'm looking at the slides that I want to share with you and making sure that I've got these lined up right. Okay, we do. Here we go. All right, so he starts with, before listening to economists, remember they will always be on the positive side of tough news. So if you were in the Supreme event a few weeks back and you had the opportunity to listen to Mr. Duncan, chief economist for Fannie Mae, and you heard his predictions of what was going to happen in the future, you might have come away with the same things that I did, which was, it's not really going to be that bad, right? Then I had the opportunity to have dinner with him and dive a lot deeper into that conversation. And again, I walked away with, it's really not going to be that bad. And then Gary hits us with this, and it's the very first thing he shares in this mastermind. Before listening to economists, remember they will always be on the positive side of tough news. Now, not to say Doug Duncan, right? Did I get the name right? Yes. Chief economist, Fannie Mae. Yeah, not to say that Mr. Duncan was wrong, but one of the things he shared was interest rates will probably not go over 6%. Well, if you're paying attention to the news, interest rates are going over 6%. Matter of fact, they're calling for a 0.75% rise in interest rates. Now, if you're currently working with a buyer, that might be something you want to talk to them about, because maybe they want to get under contract before the interest rates go up by 0.75 point. One of your call points today might be that. All right, last quarter of 2005, you could see the Great Recession. Now, it wasn't called that until 2008. And what's interesting is there were 2 million people. We're going to talk about the market we're in now. There were 2 million people in April of 2020 who retired. It's called the Great Resignation, and took opportunity with COVID to go ahead and say, that's it, I'm going to retire. Well, if you look at unemployment, a large part of why unemployment is so low is because 2 million people left the workforce. Guess what? They're coming back. They're estimating 20,000 people per major city coming back to the workforce. What's that going to do to unemployment?
Make it smaller.
It's going to go up. If you put more people into the workforce, now you're factoring the number of people who are unemployed. What's that? What is that noise?
That is mine. I can't get it to shut up. I tried to shut up.
Okay, John, just ignore it. It's okay. Ignore it. Ignore it.
I tried to lower it.
Okay. You add more people to the workforce. Now you're dividing the number of unemployed people into a bigger number. Your unemployment goes up. You have more people who are unemployed. All right. Just remember 4% is excellent. Okay. Keep an eye on unemployment. Now, I'm going to share my screen. This is going to jump around a little bit just because of the way this is in here. And guys, bear with me.
Did you say 4% is excellent?
Anything under 4%. Anything under 4%. All right, let's talk GDP. One of the signs that a recession is coming is 2 quarters of negative GDP. Let me move these pictures around so that I can see over here on first quarter of 2022, GDP was negative 1.4%. Now, if there was a window in Vegas that you could go to in which you're going to place a bet, and you could place a bet on whether or not the GDP is going to be positive or negative for the second quarter of 2022, I would tell you, bet the house on it's going to be negative. It's a fact, which means by the end of June, you're looking at recession. Okay. Now, guys, none of this conversation is meant to discourage you, although I can see where that could be the fact. And just know that we're headed for a recession. There's no way around that. It's just a fact. Recession is officially 2 negative quarters back to back and can't be called until the following quarter, so it lags substantially, which means you won't hear we're in a recession until the end of the third quarter of 2022. So you're in a recession 3 months before you realize you're in a recession, is basically what he's saying. Okay. If you look at previous recessions, the worst one was between 2006 and 2008. Now, he shares that you survive in order to thrive. You guys know that. You must cut the things that are not important. So one of the things that I would encourage you to do is the same thing that they're encouraging us to do as leaders of the different market centers, is to create 3 different columns in your budget. And one of the columns is going to be everything that you're spending money on, and you have no idea what that is.
Yeah.
In other words, here's $5 a month going to blank, blank, blank. I don't even know what that is. So put everything in a column that you don't even know what that is. And then the second column that you want to create, and you color code these, is yellow, pink, and green. The second column is a list of things that you would like to have, right? My Netflix account, I would like to have it, right? But I don't have to have it. Now, the third column is everything that you have to have, like your mortgage payment. By the way, your car payment is not one, because do you have to have that? No, you don't. Could you get a less expensive car? Yes, you could. Could you buy a car with cash? Well, maybe. It depends. Now, third column is what you absolutely have to have. Now, look at the A column, which is the things you don't know what they are. The B column are the things that you would like to have, and eliminate as many things from A and B as possible. Eliminate everything from A and B if possible.
Yeah.
And do you have 9 months worth of cash reserves in an account to support you and your cost of living if we're headed for hard times? In other words, what is your monthly nut? What does it cost you to support your family? Let's just say it's $10,000 a month. It's a round number. Do you have $90,000 sitting in an account that you can live on if the market shifts? 5.2% interest rates are not slowing things down enough. In other words, if you look at inflation's continuing to rise and interest rates are not slowing things down, which means interest rates are going up. All right. You don't need to fear this. Just make sure you protect your business by reducing your expenses. Read, tough times don't last, but tough people do. All right, give me one more minute. I'm going to go back to share screen and all right. Interest rates started going up in 2021. And they have been going up since 2021. And the best experts are all predicting that those are going to continue to go up. All right. Guys, I want to be able to share these without doing this every time. And I apologize, it's working that way. But at the same time, just hang with me. Let's go here. Thank you for that. I really do appreciate that.
You're doing great.
Oh, I don't know about that. I'm being challenged with this right now, but that's okay too. All right. The yellow line is a trend line. If you follow that trend line, that's what home prices should do. And one of the things I want you to notice is 2021 and 2022 are the first time we've been above that trend line. And what that means is if you look at home prices over time, 4% increase is the trend line. And the last time we were above the trend line was 2005, 2006, 2007, and barely in 2008. Now, what happened next? We had a market shift. We had the Great Recession. And the other thing I want you to notice, and this is super important, is 2006, right here. If you see my mouse, little clicker right there, okay? 2006 is when the market shifted. The price of homes didn't go down until 2008. It didn't show up in home values until 2 years later. Now, the other thing I want you to notice is just track that line going straight across. It was 2016 until homes were worth what they were worth in 2008 when the prices started to drop. Now, the values dropped from 2008 until 2012. That's the first year the values started to come back. The market shifted in 2006. It continued. We continued in that shift until 2011, 2012. It was 5 years long, 6 years long. Values dropped from 2008 until 2012. And then the values started to slowly come back. And it was 2016 before homes were worth the same thing they were worth in 2008. Are you guys following me? Now, I'm going to come back and I'm going to close this morning's conversation with a story around that. And I want to keep going until we do that, okay? All right. All right, so should I buy a house? Well, it depends. What this tells me is if you're planning on keeping your home 9 years or longer, the answer is absolutely yes. Which means if this market is anything like the last shift we were in, and I don't think it's going to be that severe, just so you heard me, okay? I don't think it's going to be that severe. However, if it is, and this time is kind of like last time, history repeats itself, right? Then if you're going to be keeping that home for 9 years or longer, yes, buy. Because even if the values go down, they will eventually come back. And within 9 years, your home is going to be worth more than it is today. Now, if you think you're going to move in the next 2 or 3 years, maybe you shouldn't. Now, most people, and this is a statistical fact, because most people in the United States move on average every 10 years. So if you ask 100 people, are you going to plan on living in your home for at least 9 years? At least 90% of them are going to say yes, which means Nick asked me, well, John, should I buy a house? My answer to Nick is, are you planning on living in your home longer than 90 years? Nick says yes. Then my answer is then absolutely. Let's make an offer. Script, write it down. All right. Now, I'm going to stop the screen share and we're going to have a conversation that I was having with sellers back in 2008, 9, and 10. And I'm a big believer this time might be like that time. I have a lot of this time might be like that time conversations. So if you watch the real estate market back in 2004, 5, and 6, it was doing this. And then in 06, we had a shift. Now, how do you know you're in a shift? Well, fewer showings, Michael Topo.
No, I mean, I was going to say fewer showings, more price reductions, more properties on the market, and 2 negative quarters.
Okay, there you go. You have fewer showings. You have Homes are on the market longer, so days on market is increasing. Your supply and demand is getting greater. You have more inventory, fewer showings, fewer buyers, and those are the first signs that you're in a shift. Now, you are already seeing that. Say yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you look at home sales in 2022, every single month this year, sales are down year over year, which means we've had 5 months of decreasing home sales. Hello, shift. Sales in Parkland Coral Springs are down 18.2% year to date from last year. Now, I've been reporting that number to you a lot. And if you remember, through the end of April, it was 18.9%. So 18.2% is a little bit better. It's still down.
Yeah, you're talking about double-digit percentages.
Correct. Yeah. Now, watch this. 2008. It took 2 years for home prices to start to drop. Are you guys with me? Now, the market started dropping. And in 2009, 2010, we started having conversations about what is this going to look like? Where's the bottom? And what's going to happen when we hit the bottom? And the economists were saying it's going to be a V market, which means prices will probably drop for about 3 years. This was 2010. So we're maybe a year away, 2011. So 3 years down, 3 years back. By 2014, we're going to be exactly where we were in 2008. Were they right?
No.
Say no, they weren't. Now, then there were other economists who said, well, it'll probably look a little bit more like a U, right? And in reality, what happened was 2008, 2012, prices started to come back, but let's do this and then do this and do this. And this was 2011. For about a year, it bottomed out. It looked like an L, not a V, not a U, but more like an L market. And then it slowly came back until prices were the same in 2016 as they were 2018. 2008. Thank you. Now, I'm having a conversation with a seller, and it's 2009, 2010. And I'm asking them, what do you think is going to happen? And if you knew that the prices were going to continue to drop for another 2 to 3 years, what would you do now? We have a crystal ball. We're looking at the crystal ball, and we know that prices are going to drop another 2 or 3 years. What would you do, Maddie? Now, if the prices drop for another 2 to 3 years and they come back more like a U, not like an E, and it's going to be 2016 before your home is worth the same it was back in 2008. If you knew that was the case and you had an opportunity to sell it today for blank, what would you do? And what happens in this type of market is you have homeowners who are trying to magically get back to what their home was worth back in 2008. If we could just get in a time machine and go back and sell our home 2 years ago, we could sell it for $700,000 instead of selling it for $650,000. How can we do that? Well, you can't. You can sell it today for $650,000 because that's what it's worth, or you can wait another 6 years and then you can sell it for $700,000. Now, what's your holding cost between now and 6 years from now? How much money is it going to cost you to keep your home another 6 years in order to try to recover that $50,000 that you lost? Now, Mr. and Mrs. Home Seller, 2022. If this market is anything like the market we saw back between 2006 and 2012, and you knew that it was, what would you do? Now, how do we know that it might be? Well, pay attention to GDP. Pay attention to interest rates. Pay attention to the writing that is on the wall. We are headed for a recession. It's a fact. And more than likely, again, these are the economists speaking, not John Dietz. It's going to be 2024 before this levels off. You look at that inflation map, it's going to continue to go up until 2024. You look at the recession indicators, the average recession going back through history lasts 9 months. Now, the recession that we were in 2008 was longer than 9 months, but on average, 9 months. Now, if history repeats itself, and if Gary Keller is right, because remember, this information is coming from Gary Keller. He shared that in his mastermind a few weeks ago to the top 100 agents and the top 100 team leaders in the company. Are we headed for tough times? Now, another book that I would recommend that you read is called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Now, I'm going to warn you ahead of time. It's not written by Disney. There will be some words that are not Mo Anderson approved. And I just want to share a couple of the quotes that he shared from The Hard Thing About Hard Times. So he talks about the difference between peacetime and wartime. And if you haven't figured it out yet, this is a wartime conversation. It's not a peacetime conversation, right? It's Chloe, right?
Yeah.
So Chloe's brand new to real estate. Can you imagine? You're brand new to real estate. You're attending the very first class you're attending, and this is the topic, right? She's like, what am I doing? So it's all good. I promise you. You know what? I know what the ending looks like, and it's good. We win. Okay. Keller Williams, during the last shift, became the largest real estate company in the world. We were built for this. So you're all good. We've got a plan. All right. Is it peacetime or wartime? Peacetime in business is generally when a business has a competitive advantage and its market is growing. Wartime in business is when the business is facing an immediate threat from a competitor, the economic climate, or a major market shift. So we need to think like wartime CEOs. Peacetime CEOs focus on the big picture and empowers her people to make detailed decisions. Wartime CEOs care about a speck of dust on a gnat's ass if it interferes with the prime directive. Peacetime CEOs know what to do with a big advantage. Wartime CEOs are paranoid. Peacetime CEOs think of the competition as other ships in a big ocean that may never engage. Wartime CEOs think of the competition as sneaking into her house and trying to kidnap her children. Now, guys, here's what I would do. And then we're going to open this up for conversation. I would get out the book Shift, and I would start reading that book again. All right. Now, I've always, in the last couple months, I've been focused on pages 49 through 156, and other mostly focused on lead generation and lead conversion. However, I'm going to change what I've been telling you. I want you to read the first couple chapters on mindset, because that's where it starts, and on rebudgeting your business. Then I want you to skip to page 49 and focus on what lead generation looks like in a shifting market, what it means to double down on the number one thing you do. and why finding the motivated is so important. The difference between agents who survive to thrive in this market and the agents who get out of the business is going to be understanding and implementing the principles of shift. One more thing before I open it up to conversation. Get really good at having the local economists of choice conversations with your customers. They're counting on you to know the market better than anybody else. This is your superpower. This is what drove the Dietz team from 2006 into 2012 into the top 5 real estate teams in our market, because we mastered this. Sellers need real estate agents who have mastered this. Get really good at having those conversations. All right, questions, comments, ahas. Megan, talk to me.
So the first question I have for you is, would you recommend taking short sale workshops?
100%. Yes.
Okay. And then the second thing is, I've heard time and time again that the top producers and the top agents, even in my area or in general, they have all made the most money during these shifts.
100%.
Because in their entire career.